muted again. There you go. And somewhere you're supposed to be able to say how
Join with audio.
All right, I will call the meeting to order. Now it is 2:00. Welcome everybody today. We're here at a public meeting today, so I'll declare the meeting open at 2:00 and ask Cody, you and Ashley back there? Yep. Cody Hugh to give us an indication of anybody that wants to join us or is joining us online for how they can participate. Cody?
Thank you, and through you, before I begin, if at any point you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is being held in 2 locations, both being held in Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Any public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom and cannot be done through YouTube at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. And I'll ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof from any of the members? Seeing none, and I will indicate that our Deputy Mayor, Tom Hutchison, is zooming in today. He is on the screen. With that, we're here for a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment ZA 33-2023. So as I said, I'll declare the meeting open. I do have some announcements to make. The clerk forces me to read these at every public meeting, so bear with me on this one. Thanks, Jamie. I would like to remind everyone that the purpose of this public meeting is to receive input from the public. Every person who attends a statutory public meeting required under the Planning Act shall be given an opportunity to make representation in respect to the proposed bylaw. All submission materials for this application are available at the West Grey Municipal Office during regular business hours. If a person or a public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Municipality of West Grey to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Municipality of West Grey before the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Municipality of West Grey before the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Thank you. It's kind of like reading your rights, but Jamie, you have some comments and notices.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. Notice of this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the subject property, and mailed to all properties within 120 meters of the subject property on December 20th, 2023. The comments that were received before the publishing of the agenda have been attached to the agenda. Anyone wishing to provide verbal comments at this public meeting is asked to sign the sign-in sheet located on the speaker's table. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to me, the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Municipality of West Grey, care of the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk.
Thank you, Jamie. With that, we'll go down now to presentation from the Manager of Planning and Development. Mr. Smith or Mr. Shipwreck?
this clerk was gonna. So you gonna put the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, usually is a PowerPoint.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, as you mentioned, the application is ZA 33 2023 Clegg in the Coptic Orthodox Church. And I'll ask if you could scroll down as we go along, please. Thank you. Location of the application is 102554 Road 49. The purpose of the application is to change the zone symbol on the subject lands from an A2 rural to an A2 rural and an institutional with exception on the property. The effect of the application is to permit a monastery, which includes a residence for up to 12 monks, a residence for 8 volunteers, accommodation for seasonal farm help, a chapel, and to permit also the uses in the A2 rural zone, since property would have potentially a split zoning on it. Included in the package that's in before you is the location of the property on the corner of Road 49 and Concession 2 WGR. The property, as I mentioned itself, at this particular time is zoned A2 with the proposal for the split zoning institutional and agriculture. If you go down to the next page, please. Before you on the screen there is the proposed split on the property. It's almost a 50-50 split at this particular time on that particular location. We did circulate the application at this time to municipal departments and to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority and to the County of Grey. And we have received comments back from Fire, Public Works, Building, from Saugeen Valley Conservation. We did receive also comments not noted on here from the County of Grey. And at the time of writing this particular report, we did receive comments from resident Don McEachern and resident Terry and Cheryl Black. And as mentioned by others, we have received other comments that have been included in your package and some that have not been included since the package was published late last week. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start into anybody from the public has anything to say, Cody, I'm going to ask you back. Anybody online at this time?
Members of the public wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting who have joined us virtually can do so in one of two ways. The first being if you have phoned into the meeting, you can press *9 to raise your hand and that will let us know you would like to speak. Alternatively, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. The second option for members who have joined us virtually via Zoom, you can either send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, stating that you would like to speak, or raise your hand, which is typically located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen by either a blue or yellow hand icon.
Thank you, Cody. And do we have anybody online?
It does not appear we have anybody online wishing to speak.
Okay. Then I shall go ahead. You've got the regulation stuff.
Through you, Mayor Eccles, we did receive a number of correspondence that were submitted electronically. I won't read them out verbatim. However, I will note that following the meeting, they will all be republished with the agenda, so they'll be available for public consumption on our website later today. One of the comments was received by Mary Joan Beamish in opposition to the zoning amendment. Correspondence were received from Questa Planning on behalf of several residents in the area who also object to the application. Nicole Van Esch has requested notice of decision of the application. Margaret Kreller has submitted comments in opposition to the zoning amendment, as well as a document containing several names from residents in the area, being Margaret Kreller and Kevin Cowell, Dave and Virginia Bint, Jack and Mary Joan Beamish, Dan and Diane McEachran, Kevin Dreyer, Sophia Cowell, Anna Cowell, Tony Dean Clements, Gary Hartung and Cindy Mitchell, James and Kathy Armstrong, Manny Diaz, Lynette Weaver and Kevin Small, Patrick and Janice McKenna, Norman, Carly and McCory, Ken Mollison, Neil and Holly Groton Hui, Terry and Cheryl Black, Aaron and Ashley Rice, Marie and Nancy Lee, James Horst, Tim Burley and Leanne Burley, Ron and Mark Rapp, and Nicole and Greg Crispin.
Thank you, Jamie, for those. So we have a number of comments that have been written in. At this time, I'm going to open it up for any comments from anybody in attendance today. One thing I'd ask you to do, please attend the speaker's chair, and if you could sign in or at least give us your name, so for the record. Want to start, Ron? Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Ron Davidson. I'm a planning consultant, and I filed the application on behalf of my clients. They are the Canadian Coptic Orthodox Diocese of Mississauga, Vancouver, and Western Canada. That's their title. With me today are three of the representatives from the church. And I believe Father Moses is going to say just a few things after I'm done talking about planning here. And they'll explain who they are. What I will say for now is that this church group, they established a nuns convent just west of Paisley 8 years ago. And now they're hoping to establish a monastery on the subject property for monks. They don't own the property just yet, as you've probably seen on the application, but they do have an agreement in place to purchase it. So the zoning bylaw amendment application and then the planning justification report that I prepared was submitted to Wes Gray, and it has outlined everything that will occur on the property. And you just heard from your planner, Mr. Smith, go over that briefly. First and foremost, the proposal involves up to 12 monks living permanently on the premises, and it's under the current zoning. There would be nothing to stop the monks themselves from living together on the property without a zoning bylaw amendment, because you can't discriminate against related or unrelated people. But they want to do other things on the property. They would like a temporary accommodation for approximately 8 volunteers. Those would be students who occasionally, and that would be maybe a couple of days at a time, every now and then, help the monks maintain the property. There will also be a small chapel for visitors to pray at set times. And again, you'll hear probably more about this from Father Moses, but it would be about every 2 weeks. The chapel will be designed to accommodate a maximum of 45 people. It is the church's intention to utilize the existing buildings to accommodate the proposed use. All of the uses that you've heard described will occur within it would take a big renovation, but a renovation of the existing horse stable, which again will require significant changes, and those changes will have to be in compliance with the Ontario Building Code, satisfactory to your chief building official. There will no doubt need an architect involved to assist in this regard, and that would happen after the zoning bylaw amendment has been approved. The existing house on the property will serve as the rectory where the bishop and abbot will reside. There's a shed and a garage on the property for now, and they will continue to be used for storage purposes. In the future, the church might erect another small building that would provide accommodation for seasonal workers on the farm, because the church intends to grow crops on the fields. Everything that's been proposed is shown on a site plan that I submitted with the application. Obviously, this application has drawn a lot of attention from the neighbors. I'm assuming everybody's here to participate, and that there's not another item on the agenda that's drawn these folks here. We've been trying to feed as much information to the neighbors as possible. A couple weeks ago, one of these nice women called me, and we spoke for about 45 minutes. This is a good conversation, and I provided her with a copy of my planning report, so she would have that much more information. I asked her to share that with the neighbors, and I believe she did. Then last week, there was a lengthy letter with a bunch of questions that was submitted to Wes Gray, and staff were good enough to forward it on to us. I answered the planning questions, and Father Moses answered the questions regarding the nature of the intended land use. Father Moses, as you'll hear in a few minutes, will try to explain that the monastery, the whole idea of this location is they're looking for a quiet spot. And I know that's, I think neighbors think maybe that's contrary to what they think is going to happen, because the monks are here for prayer and solitude. And anyone visiting to worship will basically be there for the same purpose. In terms of noise and all that has come up. If when there is a prayer or worship time every couple of weeks with a capacity of about 45 people in the chapel, that would probably mean about 15 to 20 cars coming to the site. I'm assuming that wouldn't be disruptive. They're cars. It's not like they're dump trucks or something like that associated with a gravel pit, but that's just my opinion. There were 2 more letters received yesterday from the neighbors and sent to us from West Gray staff, and we didn't have enough time to respond to that. Just a couple more things I want to say here. So council can consider an application of this type of use. It's an institutional use. The lands are designated rural in the official plan, not agricultural. This means they're not considered to be prime agricultural lands in the opinion of the County of Gray official plan. So institutional uses are allowed by way of zoning bylaw amendment, and that's what we're here today. Now, it's been brought to our attention that in the southeast corner of the property, which is not within the area subject to rezoning, apparently there are, I believe, a couple of people buried there, because I believe there are a couple of grave markers on the site, and that's been brought to our attention. In this regard, I did speak with your planner, David Smith, last week about this. If this application proceeds, it looks like at the very least a stage 1 archaeological assessment would be done. For the benefit of everybody in the room that's not an archaeologist or doesn't know what that means, it means at the very least it's a tabletop review where an archaeologist would basically do their homework and find out exactly what has happened on the property. It could lead to a stage 2 or a phase 2, which is the archaeologist and a team of staff members come onto the property and do a series of test pitting and or tilling. Usually you go down about 6 or 8 inches and to find out whether or not there's anything else there. I realize you're not going to find it sounds morbid, but bodies only 6 inches below. But you can't possibly do that. You're not going to dig up the whole property, and go 6 or 8 feet deep. If council was to approve the zoning for institutional use, I would respectfully ask they add a holding symbol to make sure that archaeological assessment is done, and that would be done before new buildings are constructed on the property. That's approach that is generally accepted in this area. We seem in Bruce County, where I do an equal amount of work over there, they're a little bit more concerned, I guess, about archaeological assessments. Quite often the holding symbol is attached, and I would ask if council again is going to approve the zoning that they do it by adding a holding symbol. Now, there's one more thing that needs to be addressed. In my planning report, I make the statement that there are no livestock facilities within the immediate area. That was based on information that was provided to me. And I've learned yesterday that that information is not correct. And if it isn't correct, and we need to, then we need to take a step back. Now we've got lots of time because council is not going to be making a decision today anyways, but take a look at that barn or barns that do exist. And because in Ontario, land uses, for example, a house has to be set back a certain distance from barns and the adjacent properties. In the case of an institutional use, you also need to be set back, but that setback does in fact double. In Ontario, this is known as minimum distance separation, or MDS. There's a software program that allows us to do that calculation. And what I would respectfully ask is that the owners of those three, it's been brought to my attention that there's 3 barns, one right across the road, and then one further east and one to the southeast. If we could get the information about those barns, I'll volunteer Mr. Smith to be the recipient of that information, and then I in turn would do the calculation, or David Smith could do it himself, just so we make sure that we can meet the MDS setback. And if we can't, yeah, then there's an issue there. Mr. Mayor, that's it for my presentation. I know, again, one of the representatives of the church would like to spend a couple minutes to address some of the issues, because I know there's a lot of concern here about the nature of the application. So I think if you heard it from the applicant directly, I think it would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And yes, I was going to do that. Father?
Dear Mayor and councillors and everybody here, it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. My name is Father Anthony Wadi. I am the parish pastor of Archangel Raphael and Santa Marina Coptic Orthodox Church in Burlington, Ontario. It's a pleasure to be out here. I wanted to say a few words about, I know Ron referred to Father Moses. He's the better looking brother here. So he decided that he wanted to put me up here. My name is Anthony, after, I guess, the great Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony the Great is the one who established monasticism in the whole world. Even the Catholic Church and other churches recognize Saint Anthony the Great as the founder of monasticism in the whole world. So I'm proud to be talking about a monastery that we are thinking of having here in this area. I am one of 50 priests who make up the Diocese of Mississauga, Vancouver, and Western Canada Coptic Orthodox Diocese. We serve 35 churches across the provinces from Ontario, starting from Mississauga all the way to Vancouver. And we have different congregations, obviously located in different cities. The closest church actually is about 300 kilometers away from here. We have established, as Ron has mentioned, through God's grace, we've established a convent in Paisley for nuns. We have 2 nuns now there after 8 years of promoting it, and 2 more that are waiting to be ordained as nuns. And we thought it's about time to also establish a monastery as well. Calling people to monasticism is not an easy task. People who decide to leave the world and its vainglory, as we refer to it, and decide to dedicate their life for prayer is something that doesn't come easy. We do have monasteries in Egypt, lots of those. However, here in Canada, second generation folks, we are still trying to ease them into the idea. We feel that this is a way of life that's unique. Is very different for those of you who have never been to a monastery. The intent for those people who leave the world and stay in the monastery is to really focus on their spiritual life. Prayer routines of those monks is very rigid. They wake up very early in the morning. They barely sleep. They start prayers as early as 4 in the morning. And they labor as well. So they do some hand work as well to keep them busy so that they are not tempted. They prefer solitude. They don't like to have multiple guests coming in. However, these places are also places where our congregation members feel are unique as well. So they tend to like to come and visit every while just to get the blessing of the monastery and the monks. But it's usually a secluded area. That's why we never build monasteries or convents in the middle of cities. We always, even in Egypt, they are far in the middle of the desert, far away from people, hardly accessible, just to make sure that we protect the nature of this lifestyle. So again, this will be no different if this is God's will, that this land becomes appropriate for establishing a monastery. This will be no different. We will do everything we can to protect the privacy of the monks and obviously of the neighbors around, to make sure that nothing is impeding their lifestyle that we intend for them. Otherwise, we would be defeating the purpose of having a monastery. One of the things that are important for you to understand is the monasteries are not open to the public all year round. There are times like Great Lent and the fast preceding Christmas. We celebrate Christmas on January the 7th. So these periods of times, monasteries and convents are closed, absolutely closed for the public. Nobody's allowed to come. So for the 55 days preceding Easter and the 40 days preceding Christmas, these are times of the season where we want the monks and the nuns to be focused entirely on prayer without any distraction from the public. So we prohibit any visits to the monks and to the nuns during those times. So from a traffic perspective, there will be times during the year where we are the ones who are going to insist that no visitors are allowed. And this is a common practice that we have in the monasteries and convents in Egypt as well and everywhere in the world. I think I've helped put together some of the answers to the questions that we've received. One of the questions or one of the answers that I wanted to make sure is monks are not farmers. They are not trained to be farmers. They don't have the skill set to be farmers. So that's why, in order for us to kind of protect the agricultural portion of the land, I guess that's why we talk about having some labor, hopefully from within the community. And this is what exactly happened at Paisley. The relationship between the nuns and the neighbors is outstanding, and I do encourage you to go and visit if you want and ask the neighbors around the convent to see they take care of the nuns on our behalf. Actually, we were very happy that the neighbors have taken it upon themselves to really protect the nuns and keep an eye on them and see if they need anything. And in one case, when one of them was really sick and she needed to be taken to if he asked us to love our enemies, then we absolutely should love our neighbors. So that's a brief overview of the church, the plan, the monastery, and I'm sure there will be a few other questions to answer. Father Moses and I and my weakness will be here for the rest of the meeting. So if there are any questions that we can answer, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you for your time. It felt like I was giving a sermon, but I was hoping that I wouldn't be talking about feeding the multitudes, the miracle of feeding the multitudes. I was hoping somebody would stop me if I suddenly switched over to a sermon. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, please.
Feels pretty short. My name is Margaret Kreller. So I do have with me today, I've got a copy of the Normandy Reflections book that had been assembled. In that book, there is a reference information regarding the Black Pioneer Cemetery. I also have with me today the Mount Forest Homer magazine, where they had done an article on it in 2009, So that is available if anybody would like to be able to have some background. So we'll start. Mr. Mayor, Westbury councilors and everyone present and virtually. Today we are here to discuss the rezoning of a parcel of land. A parcel of land which is currently A2 agricultural to A2 agriculture with institutional with exceptions. We need to look at today plus the future and consider that the implications that that's going to make. And if a rezoned and a portion is institutional, if it can be resold, carrying that designation of institutional, which falls under that category. It could be a home for the aged, rest home, medical clinic, but also private clubs. List of our comments and our questions for today. When we did get that planning report, it actually created much confusion. Because the one thing that we all noticed was the barns that were not within 1 kilometer. And with that statement, knowing that MDS needed to be done, that minimum distance separation, that created into us so much confusion. What else in that report is inaccurate? So that is where an awful lot of our questions and our comments came from. And currently holding a structure, can they be developed? Another question is, so with those barns that are within that 1 kilometer, that are they going to be able to expand their operation? So we're looking at that agricultural piece. Can we expand what we do? If we don't currently have infrastructure, can we put that infrastructure up? Specifically looking that institutional zoning doubles that. So it's not regular MDS, it's twice that. So that was one of our, so categorizing some of our concerns, that's a large one. The other one is the use of the road, because it's Road 49. Many people know Road 49. It's currently supporting resident traffic, large farm machinery, and large campers. And there's also 7 undeveloped lots there. So once even those are developed, so we already have planned increased traffic for 7 lots. And now there's another proposal, and it's going to add another layer of volume into that mix. And when the frost comes out in the spring, that's just a comment in itself. And on a rainy day. So so one of our major concerns as well is our road. The Black Pioneer Cemetery, as I say, I've got that information here. An awful lot of heritage there. We're a little bit protective, more or less even as well. We all look at the bowl. Oh, I'm sorry. So what? For the Blacks that came with the Underground Railroad. So there was a knitting of that community. We still feel a bit protective of that. That's a bit of our heritage in our area there. Lighting and parking lot, which we're not just, so some of this, we're not expecting on a rural property, which gives us some concern. Taxes. And then there was some issues with how this presented and how this all played out to the people in the area, to the residents. I don't know if you want to discuss that now, if they should be presented now. We have sent some documents. They are in our comment and questions, okay? And we would also like to know if there's going to be another opportunity for us to be able to have dialogue, ask questions, and really we'd like to invite you, all the councillors, anybody, to come to our little neighborhood. Come and see us, come and talk to us. The people who have signed our, or have are included in our comment and question document. When you look at the number of life years that they have spent in our area, there is 600 minimum, because we weren't able to include everybody, but there's a minimum of 625 life years for the people that have made a comment in that document. And so we know our area. And because it's on a corner, it really does affect the road with people coming from both ways, the direction that it goes. And as I say, what we're looking at today really is a rezoning and what the implications of a rezoning, not necessarily for a monastery, but what is this rezoning, what does it open it up to? So we also had, because of our confusion, we went to a planning consultant up in Owen Sound, and they were able to, we asked them to look at it from their view, not knowing, and as I say, having that confusion with MDS separation. So they have sent to council a copy of their report. I don't know if you necessarily want me to go over that, because you will have a copy of that to be able to read. And what they did was they took our information and they were able to put it through the lens of a planner on behalf of the residents. So that's because there's an awful lot, when they look at it through their lens, there's an awful lot of construction that is going to be done on that site. There's an awful lot of bulldozing, which will be required. What we're looking at now, what we visually see, is going to be very, very different. The aggregate resources, there's some thought about the aggregate resources that are there to be able to protect the active and the future operations. I know in our personal comment document, we were looking at the Grey County development proposal, their planning document, to make sure that this is going to be compatible as well with succession planning for the agricultural. The archaeology, I agree with Mr. Ron Davidson, and they had said as well that there needs to be a phase 1 agricultural assessment done. Word of mouth, and there is some confusion as there were bodies exhumed from there before. So that's a comment. And to be able to know some more information about the farm workers, who's going to be there. There are still an awful lot of buildings on that property. They're trying to use as the existing buildings as much as possible. Do we need to really put up yet another building? And then also our concern was if the other agencies that had received that other planning report, do we need to go back to them, ask them if they need to look at it again with a different lens, with either the planning report that we had received and with some of our comments regarding from the neighbors and the community.
A lot of information there for sure. Carl or David,
Oh,
do you
yes.
want to make any comments?
Can I, sorry, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I ask if council actually has had an opportunity to be able to, because they are lengthy documents our comment document was not sent up to the office until 9 o'clock yesterday. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to be able to review that document for all of our comments. Yeah, and then the planning report, it's a long, lengthy report. But those truly are, because what we look at is truly, because we're looking at if it's owned institutionally, you've got a little bottom line. We've got a little parcel of land. It's 25 acres. We're going to put it in half, make some institutional, leave some A2 agricultural. Is this the best usage for that little pieces of land? Or do we take what we've learned through this entire process and apply it to another situation? And that is where also us, with how this came about with the residents, with our notification for what happened, we would like to see if maybe there's opportunities for, even though we had our proper notification, number of days, et cetera, but are there opportunities for us to learn from this? Maybe not do this, learn, and that's why we're doing this, is just as a learning process for the next time or for the next property. Sorry. That's but we do have very lengthy documents, an awful lot of comments in there.
And I think the best way for myself to answer this question on behalf of council is that, no, we haven't seen that report, the package come out. This is additional information. That's what we're here to gather today, is to hear from the public. Any other information that's coming forward. I think one of the things that even Mr. Davidson mentioned earlier in the meeting today was on those farms. Some of the information he had may not have been correct, but we will continue to gather information so we can make the correct decision on this sometime going forward.
Thank you, because as farmers, some of us have with succession planning, and that's why I mentioned as well, 625 life years in that little area, just down, and in that corner, and the neighborhood actually, you cannot make a change like this and just have word of mouth in the community. And that's how you find out that we're looking, because this is not a severance. This is a rezoning, which is a completely different implications in that little area. And so residents, the notification was an 8.5 by 11 little piece of paper. It would have been so much easier if we could have seen it. It would have been so much easier if this was not performed over Christmas. So as I say, these are little gems I think that we can harvest. And when we dig for it, we can find the good. We can see the good. There's good. I think that.
Yeah, we have it, we'll be going through it.
Okay, so if I can highlight then some from that planning report, okay? Their area's concern is the proposed land use. So the chapel itself does not appear to be the main use of the site, but appears to be more the residence for the monks. Because the chapel is a small portion for 45 people. But the actual building is expansive because it's a riding ring. It's a riding barn. So what will be in there are 2 kitchens and the accommodations, and then the chapel. So, and then the site itself, the current house will be holding 2 people. And then you'll have farm workers and an additional building then built for farm workers. So that's where some of our confusion comes in as well, because if we're rezoning this entire area as institutional, which then is removed from taxes, but the chapel itself will be holding 45 people, is that truly what the use? And that's something I don't understand for zoning and what the legalities are. But that's something that we're looking at as ratepayers, that you've got a 25-acre parcel land zoned institutional, when normally what we normally see will be a church, possibly on an acre of land. So, and also as well then for the structural conversion, the planner that we were discussing with, as much as possible, The zoning is already, that the zoning is not in place. Whatever's going to be changed, you can get halfway through a project and say, no, this is not going to work. This is not really how what it's looking at. Walk away. It's institutional. So you can start to make all of these changes, or you can make all the changes. And the community, how is that going to work? For the services then as well, because one thing that we actually wondered is how this is going to affect not just the road for the services, because that road will need to be addressed. Waste management, we considered waste management because you've got 45 people additional in that chapel. We also considered as well that although it is expected to be every 2 weeks, is there the possibility that that's going to be increased? And it's not going to be every 2 weeks. Looking at sometimes service schedules for local churches, when it is during the time of Advent, end of Lent, you do have additional services. And they are at different times during the day. So we could be looking at that as well, not just vehicles at a certain period of time during the year, but different times of the day. If some of these are at midnight, so midnight, we have the cars going down the road and then going back off the road. So that was our consideration as well. And then I do know that that you're looking at the fire, and if they need to have structurally sound everything, but all the other implications, as I say, for those services. For the farm workers, it is a small parcel of land, possibly on not the best farmland, but the permanent accommodation for farm labor. Who are these people? What are the number? And then because you will be needing to build a separate septic system for that portion, for that building, how can we build a septic system for an undisclosed or an unknown number of people, number of farm workers that will additionally be on site? So that is something that we had considered then as well. As I say before, the aggregate resources, Giesta has said that there's 2 pits marked in the Grey County GIS mapping. And I will also say that I think that an awful lot of us have become experts with that Grey County GIS map. We have been looking over that and trying to see what other people see when they look at that. Knowing also as well that their official plan is to protect the active and the future aggregate operations. And this proposed use could possibly be doing that as well. In the planner's report, they're looking at those road conditions and the safety concerns. And as I say, because of the large farm operations with the tractors, it's much different from when we were, when I was a child with the farm. It's much different. And as I say, that minimum distance separation, because it is doubled, and how that is going to affect us for future use. The archaeology and knowing a better site development plan and how this is going to develop. What are we looking at? How does the parking lot fit into that landscape that we're going to be looking at when what we're used to looking at are farms, neighbors, fields, trees. And to me, it seems a little bit of urban has come into, and there's no buffer. It's a little 25-acre parcel of land on the corner. It's really, because you're on the corner. And I think that makes a difference as well, because it's not just on one side of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll look towards staff. Yeah, fingers coming back at, no. When you point one finger, there's always 3 that are pointing back at you. I got that now. Yeah. Any of those comments, David, you want to make a comment?
All right. As you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, council, is that this is a public meeting. Our goal here is for yourselves and ourselves as staff to hear the comments from the residents. And as you noted and others noted, is that we received quite a number of them on paper and some the verbal comments here this afternoon. There is no recommendation, as you know, before council. You're here to hear from them and for us to hear from them also. There is, as part of the process, there is we're coming back to council, and I can't give you the date yet, where staff will provide you a planning report that reviews the issues in general, and will provide a recommendation of yes, no, defer, or whatever in that regard for your consideration. There is, no public notice of that. They need to stay tuned. The public notices of this particular meeting, and the secondary public notice would be of a decision that council would make in the future, whether or not that's approval, refusal, or what other decision you may make at that time.
Thank you for that. And that's what we're looking for here is the questions and being able to go forward and address that. I'm not certain that we have any of the answers today, just off the cuff on some of those. So are there any other questions or comments today? Can you just use the microphone and state your name, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council, and good afternoon to everyone here today. My name is Janice McKenna, and we're all talking about very clinical things right now in barn distance and the farm vehicles, which are really, really important. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because I just felt it got a little bit missed, is the quality of life. My husband and I searched for years and years and years. We deliberately wanted to be on an unpaved road. We wanted to be where we could see the stars. We wanted to be where we could grow our own food. And it is a wonderful community. If that road were to become paved or the night light were to change, it really does affect our quality of life. And for those of us that have known from the time we were born, we were meant to live in the country, every time the country becomes a little bit more like the city, it's time to move. And those are my thoughts today. I hope you don't mind my speaking.
Rarely do I get anybody that is very thankful for living on a gravel road. I'm almost lost for words. Although, especially Road 49, I think I've heard a few comments before on that. Thanks very much, Don. Although I have lived on a gravel road most of my life, but anyways, not going to go there on my issues for the day. Any other comments, questions? Sir, I was pointing over his head, but anyways.
Good afternoon, Council.
Go ahead.
My question would be,
Can you give your name just for the record?
Neil Grotnos, one of the neighbors. My question would be, why would you take a 25-acre parcel, cut it in half, have half of it zoned institutional, when you already have an established convent in Paisley? Why not move your operations there that are already zoned in?
Yeah, there probably needs to be an answer to that. No, yeah, if you want to go, yeah, go ahead and use the microphone, Father.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor, and the neighbors here for allowing me to speak. I am Father Moses from St. Mary and St. Moses Church in Windsor. Just to say a few things, as we mentioned before, we have establishment for a convent for nuns and the other one for monks. We can't mix both of them, first. Second, this parcel already zoned for a group home and for bed and breakfast. So I don't think it's if you use it for a monastery or convent with the people add value to the place. By the way, my background, I'm an architect, and I was working in the Paisley convent, and we spent over renovation, the existing for over 1.5 million for renovation inside and bring nice value to the area and landscaping. By the way, as well, I have a real estate license before. And this add value when you have a landscaping, if you in the future need to sell your property as well, and they have a neighbor look after their property, and then the nun or the mom. And the 12 month we mentioned about the plan, this is the full scope, maybe will take place maybe after 40 years, 50 years. We mentioned about the monastery in Birth, for now running for 11 years, has only 2 monks. And some of them, this monk as well, they be called to serve in the cities and be maybe promoted to be a bishops. So usually the number very, very small. And as Father Anthony said, 50% of the year, the place will closed because we need the people look after for themselves for prayer and quiet time. We have facility in Orangeville. It's about 45 minutes from this place. This is as about have for retreat. People maybe still have a lot of gathering and traffic. It will not happen because 45 from it in Orangeville, we have I think 300 acres or something like that, and have many rooms and houses to accommodate for 250 to sleep over and 500, and this is for retreat and as well open for not just for the Coptic Orthodox people, but everywhere. So for sure, this 25 acres, this is going to be for a few monks coming and they get add value and better than the group home already, and or maybe bed and the breakfast, it's already in the zoning now. I'm just guessing if I'm going to live beside the room, it's good for sure facility, but maybe as well might be bring the value down if somebody sold to people would like to have a group home. And I think if someone buy to the property do that, they will not have, they will right away, they establish right away. They don't need to have a public meeting or anything because it's already in the zone. I encourage any of you to check with the mayor or councillor in Paisley and people around, and you can see how this establishment in Paisley add value, and from the different aspects as well, from diversity and as well from bringing a landmark for this area as well. It will be very nice for people to come as well to see around. I mean, for you as well, or for your kids and people around. Thank you.
Just a quick question. The property in Paisley is in Aaron Eldersley, Brockton, or Saugeen Shores? Well, I know it's west of Paisley, but you get into that area and you're right on the borderline. Ray, it is Brockton? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ray. It's kind of like down there, just around Clifford. You can go onto a corner and you're not sure which county you're in. Okay, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Mr. Appleby. George?
My classroom voice, or do I use the microphone?
You use the microphone. Try and follow instructions for a change, will you?
Thank you.
Turn the microphone on too. That button.
Thank you. I'm a veteran of 60 light years or whatever you measured people in. Life years, 60 life years. And I think I'm the only one here that can say I actually grew a crop on that field. There's something for Jim to think about.
Your name, please, sir?
My name is George Holiday.
Thank you.
The one thing that I'm southeast corner of that property. It's grown up in trees, trees that were planted after a monument was put there by the Normanby Township Council, I think around 1990, to do with a homecoming, and looked after by a couple of neighbors. and in recent years it has been let go. The trees are in the way of doing any archaeological dig, I have to say. As I remember it, there were gravestones in the fence line, and there were more than the two that are used in the monument. Further to that, there's another history source that I want to mention because it's very local. Ralph Clark has done a very extensive look at our whole section of West Grey. It's called Along the Garrafraxa Trail. I'm not sure that it's readily available anywhere but from him, but I would hope that our library has access to it. And further to that, he's also done another one of a lot of the rest of that part of West Grey. In it, he uses a whole lot of the sources that the Normanby Reflections uses here. So if you want a closer look, you need to get a hold of that book. That's it. That's all.
To buy some, there's some at the door before you're leaving. My apologies for being. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, we don't have any of those downstairs, Joyce? Yeah, we do have them at the library. I might have one at home. Back to, yes, had a question at the back.
Good afternoon, Kevin and council. Thank you. My name's Tony Clements. I live on Road 49, about 3 properties away. And as Mark would like to say, I've invested more than 20 life years into the property, as well as my mother and father-in-law and my deceased wife. And when we bought the property, it was originally a hobby farm. And it was a part of a very nice, close-knit community. In fact, during the summers, when we first moved there, there were 7 houses on the entire road. We used to get together over Canada weekend. All the neighbors would get together and have a block party. So we all have grown up in this neighborhood, and it's a nice, close-knit community. You know who your neighbors are. You know who's coming and going on the road. You develop this trust with your neighbors. And not to say that somebody coming in is going to necessarily be a bad neighbor, but when you go in and you're starting to try to change the area, that is a fingerprint within that neighborhood, you're changing the whole feeling of that neighborhood. And I would like to keep our community close knit and tight, and see like a real zoning plan put together that considers the uses of the other properties around. So if I ever wanted to sell my hobby farm, I don't have to worry about a new amusement infringement on the property that says I can't sell it now as a farming farm because I can't have horses on the property. And it's a horse property. It was a horse. It used to be this, but now it's not anymore. And I want the community that I invested in. And I would really appreciate if council would consider the investment of all these people that have come in today just to tell you our concerns. But not only that, but there's I think a better way would have been if there had been some discussion within the community before this was just kind of thrown out there on us. This was kind of sprung right at Christmas, no real notice, no anything. and it impacts all of us. So we're very concerned about you changing anything I've paid property taxes for over 20 years on that property, and now you're going to allow somebody to come in, they're going to split a property in half, don't pay anything into the community taxes for that property, and then I'm going to have to carry the burden of the extra people that are on that property. Is there an environmental impact or anything that's been done with the property to say, okay, yeah, it would be fine to have 20 or 30 people on this property? I don't see that kind of legwork being put into this, and I don't want you to rush to a judgment thinking, oh, well, we're doing it because we're getting another person buying property in West Gray. It's not always about buying and selling the property in West Gray. It's about thinking about the community that's around that property. It's not just that one individual property. So I'd like for you to know that I'm opposed to the idea. I'm not opposed to the neighbors. I'm opposed to the process and the way, and that there wasn't enough clarity provided in this to say, well, if they apply for this now, what says in 3 years they can't sell it, somebody else buys it, and then they do whatever they want with it. So there's no set standard here, and I want to be in a community where I know what I'm dealing with all the time. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. There was a question there that was kind of planning towards that. Mr. Davidson, do you want to address that?
Yeah, just quickly here. I've heard this a couple of times, and it's a good question. What happens if, and the answer to that is, for what it's worth, there's a planning solution. When Mr. Smith draws up the draft zoning bylaw for council's consideration, if it gets that far, you reword it. You word it differently. You word it in such a manner that it's zoned institutional with a special provision. The special provision would only allow for this particular use plus agriculture. It's not going to allow for another. It's not going to allow for a church to come into the property or a school. It would be like, we can't, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we say it's specifically for this group of people, because you cannot zone a piece of property and say it's for this religious group or these people with white hair and white beards or something like that. You can't do that. But there is a way to, to satisfy at least that question or concern of the neighbors by getting very specific with the rezoning. It's this use or all the other uses permitted in the agricultural zone, which are already allowed, for what that's worth.
Thank you, Ron. And maybe that'll come forward in the application. Certainly. Go ahead, Mark.
So if we would be able to have specific outlines, are we then able to protect our MDS separation? Waive any right to waive that MDS so we can do our expansion without any block by that property. If it's zoned institutional, are they able to write into that they're going to waive that? So my barn on A1 at that size can be done. I don't know if that's able to, because then if you're able to do specifics, can that get put in there and they waive that? And then the MDS be null and void because of that.
Whew, I see some smoke coming out of a couple of planners' ears, but I'm not sure. That's yeah. And I'm thinking on the MDS as well too, but for that I'm gonna go to Mr. Smith.
Right, and we know that, as you mentioned, and a number of you mentioned, is that we will take a look at the MDS, period. The neighborhood that you live in has a number of residences, number of houses. And as you mentioned, I think one of you mentioned, is that there's also a number of lots that are vacant. All those current neighbors fit into MDS, as in they restrict people's barn building or expansion based on the people who live there now. Not just because we go and take a look at this particular land use, People are already restricted due to the campground, Shenandoah, sorry, I forgot the name wrong, by the existing houses that surround people's barns already, that already pose restrictions on animal agriculture in the area as a whole. So this particular use may not be adding to that existing problem that is already there because of people's houses. And it may not make it worse, but it is something, as we said, that we are going to take a look at and see what the implications are. If this particular use has no more impact than the existing uses already have, is a question. Maybe it is worse, maybe it's not, but it is something that, again, we're going to do a calculation on, because existing houses, and especially the 13 lots towards Highway 6, not all of them are currently built on, have a major impact on animal agriculture, regardless of the application before council.
One thing, go ahead.
An awful lot of this is completely out of my realm, because we have all learned an awful lot. You've gone through the books trying to figure out what MDS is. We actually even tried to calculate it ourselves based on number of animals and the size of our barns. Is it solid? Across the land across from this proposed rezoning is a piece of A1 agricultural land. If it's no barn, I can only do so much at a time. Just got the land 4 years ago. And what I'm looking at is that little bit of that little morsel of reassurance that when I put up my barn, because institutional is doubled, I can put up my barn, because around it now is a buffer. It's on 50 acres. There's A1 beside it. There is a lot beside it. And then I've got the land across the road from it as well, which is 40 acres. So what my concern really in some regards is because there's not an awful lot of A1 there. And because if I don't have the infrastructure in place, and as I say, some of it is my lack of knowledge because I don't know. And just looking for that morsel of reassurance that because it's doubled, where on my land am I able to build a barn? Of what size? What can I put in it? And if not, then can we just waive that completely, waive that right and just exclude MDS? Yeah.
Under the provincial policy statement, I'm an MDS. I probably shouldn't say anything. I'll look towards the experts over at that table over there. Oh, they're both shaking their head. They don't want to speak on it. It's a technical type of thing. I'm gonna look to Carl. Yeah, when it comes to building and whatnot. I don't think he can waive it, but. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, MDS is a provision in the zoning bylaw, so it can be amended or applied for a minor variance, just no different than any other process setback requirement in our zoning bylaw. So if in the future there was a determination that something didn't work that was requested, there is always the possibility to request from council, similar to what's going on today, for that property as well to request a reduction in their MDS.
But there would be a formal process.
That would be a formal
we can't
process.
go like this. We
That's
didn't
right.
see it.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's what we're looking at. Cody, you said that we have somebody online? Please.
Yes, we have somebody on the phone line. The last two digits of the phone number are 15. You can unmute yourself and state your name for the record as well as your comment.
Again, we've got somebody online. Last two digits, 15. I think we've got you there.
Okay, good afternoon.
Live.
Okay, thank you. My name is Robert Lyon. I'm an environmental consultant. I did 6 years at the University of Guelph, some years in consulting across Ontario, 32 years with the Ontario Ministry of Environment. I'm also licensed to haul and install the sewage under Part 8 of the EPA. I'd like to raise a few points for you to consider that people seem to be afraid of, and I'll gather some better information for you. These are real, actually happened in Durham region. One is called the Gibraltar Leadership Academy on 12 acres in a rural area. The original submission was for 7 to 12 students located at 2944 Audley Road in Ajax. 7 to 12, 8 to 12 students. That was it. 3 years later, they had between 112 and 116 students. There is no ability within public policy to reassess the septic system. The reason the Ministry of Environment was involved in this one was because the septic system blew up 3 times. The third time it exploded, the consultants came to the ministry and asked for help. It ended up with a new bed, new everything. And the problem was they were using way too much water. And it went from a very tiny school, which they got their approval for. They had expanded it without any other opportunities for anyone to comment, to an order of magnitude larger. And they'd also installed a funeral service. I doubt many of you have actually read the Quran, but the Quran allows that after you're deceased, they put you in a tray of water, flowing water for a number of hours, wash, bathe, essential oils, wrap in turn. The whole thing was that the groundwater was impacted, and so was the local people in adjacent neighbors. I'll give you a second one, different faith, just in case you are worried about anything. Faithway Baptist Church, 1964 Salem Road in Ajax. It was 35 years ago. It was originally set up as just a church on 6 acres, not a problem. It had a septic system. Septic system handled everything quite well. They then added a school for young children, a daycare facility, a section to dry out staff, another one for unwed mothers. The expansion on expansion on expansion made the bed leak continuously. And the only reason that this one was resolved was because the Baptist church chose to pump the tank daily or every other day, depending on usage. The point of this, the 2 examples, I'm going to give you some more if you're really interested, is that once you get your approval and your zoning change, there's nobody gets a do-over. There's no second chance here. Okay, there's another issue I'd like to talk to. Water availability and usage. I surveyed the provincial database and for well records, took the 14 closest wells in proximity to the subject property. They have a average depth of about 134 feet. Pump yield is 8.2 gallons. But the static level is only 87 feet. Static level is the level where groundwater, when it's not being pumped or added to, remains. So if you dig a hole, that's what you'll run into. On average, 87 feet. Any questions? Okay, the wells themselves are all around. Some of them have a remarkably low yields, particularly one adjacent to the affected property. And in the absence of knowing what these people are really planning on doing here, they say they're going to grow crops. The gentleman who spoke just last about growing crops there, I'm sure he can attest to the fact that there's not a lot of water and the soil is quite dry. That amount of water that they may potentially take could be an issue. Now, let's deal with the septic system. The initial planner who spoke at 2.5 to 3 people per car. If you average out what he did, the parking lot is for 50 cars. Then there's 12 monks. There's 8 students. There's seasonal workers, and that's an open-ended question. And then there's, on top of that, kitchen staff and support staff, other people who will be involved. All of this gets worked into the sizing of the septic system. If anyone is actually familiar with the property, you realize that only the west edge of the property is high and relatively level. The east end is quite down, quite low, quite a bit lower and down. Where are you going to build this massive bed with a pre-treatment system? I just don't understand it. And I am licensed to design and install. One last point. The cemetery. The cemetery for these Black pioneers has been there, and there's a lot of conjecture. And if you speak to anyone locally, everybody's got a different story about where the stones were, where they came from, where they moved to. There's lots of stories. Now, the actual truth, that's an open-ended question. It's much like the residential schools that the Indigenous peoples deal with. The apparent standard of good practice now is ground penetrating radar, see where the graves are or aren't, and deal with it from there, especially if there are potentially more graves than the 2 stones that are existing in that monument. I'd like you to just consider all of this. Remember that you can say that you're going to have only this, but once you grant the change of zoning, it can change to anything they want, and then they can sell it, flip it, do whatever they want, because there's no onus on them to change anything again. They have the zoning that they want to put in nursing homes or whatever it is that they really want to do. Okay, that's all I have to say. Any questions?
I believe our CBO, Director of Infrastructure. Go ahead, Carl.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So just reiterating what Ron had mentioned earlier is that the proposed zoning bylaw will be specific to exactly what the applicant is requesting. It won't be open-ended. They can't just change after the fact, whatever they want. If they want to change to whatever they want, something different in the future, they will have to start the process over again. They'll have to resubmit for requests for rezoning similar to what's they've applied for today. So outside of what they're, that zoning bylaw end up specifically asked for, they wouldn't be able to just permit to change to whatever they wish. So the zoning bylaw will be, specific to what they're requesting and specific with, limits on numbers and things like that. Secondly, I can't speak to the exact examples he provided, but for septic systems, all I can say is under the current Ontario Building Code, any expansion of any structure and any change of use to any building requires a septic review. That's automatic. We do them on 99% of all of our building permit applications require septic reviews. So I can't speak to the specifics that the gentleman mentioned, but moving forward, that's just not possible. Any expansion of any structure would require a septic review, and if it's determined the septic isn't adequate, they would have to either install a second septic system or expand the existing septic system.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Any further questions, please? No.
My name is Kevin Kowal. I live to the east of the property. We have 50 acres of A1 to the east of the property, and then we own some 4 lots there as well. That's kind of interesting question to the planner there, that you're going to approve a zoning for a property, and then we're going to go back and look at the septic system and say, whoa, it doesn't fit on the property. it seems like backwards planning, it would be going on in that case, right? In that sense. We'd have to look at this property. Like I would talk to a fellow here, father, I guess. We have a property, in Perth that's on 280 acres. We have a property in Red Deer, Alberta that's on 100 acres. We have a property in Paisley that's on 92 acres with a couple of nuns on it. Yet we want to fit all of this on 25 acres. And we've just heard from a fella that came in online here to talk that it's going to be difficult to fit this on. And there's many questions with that. You're trying to take something this big, and we're trying to put it onto something this big, right? And it's overlapping everything. It's overlapping these properties to the east, which are zoned A1. So this is going to affect that. To the south, there's agricultural land as well. And to the north, there's agricultural land. We've seen that there are barns within the region that this report, or the planner, Mr. Davidson, didn't notice. We question what else could be wrong in that report. So you would almost question whether this thing is a monastery they want to build, and it's great. I mean, it'd be awesome neighbors. I'm sure they would be fairly quiet to work there and such, but we're looking at that and thinking this may just be too big an operation they're trying to slap on the 25 acres, and maybe it would be better off to look for something that is a larger parcel of land. We could look at the one, for example, that's over in Mono. And I believe, Father, you purchased the actual monastery land first, right? And then second to that, you purchased Mother of God, I believe it is, a sort of resort. You purchased that from it was a Polish or Ukrainian church or something. So the original intention to have the small monastery on the 25 acres, and that's nice and that's good. Although it doesn't seem to fit that property. Then we start to question what's next, what's coming down the line next. Do we look around at other properties? Maybe if you offer me enough money, I'll sell you my 50 acres. Of course, it's zoned A1, so that won't work. But what's going to happen then? Because now we're going to have this monastery, and we got to think further down the road. Suddenly they're going to purchase something else, and we still have Road 49, which in the spring is like, there's times where I can hardly get down there in the spring when you get down to what they call the 40-mile swamp, right at the end, and it is the 40-mile swamp. That road, when it was done by Charles Rankin, it came up. Highway 6 was actually supposed to come up the second concession, which is all gravel, and it was supposed to come up that. Not over in that area, but eventually they changed it around and they decided to slam it right through the 40-mile swamp, which we still go through now. So that road is definitely another big issue that this whole operation, is going to affect in a large way. So, and when you talk about not much traffic or not a lot of people coming up, you stated that this drawing from a 300-kilometer range. That's your words. You stated 300 kilometers. I can't imagine 300 kilometers. That's going to be a lot of parishioners scooting up there, right? When they want to come up there for, whatever celebrations, Christmas, and these types of things. So I don't see this as something that it really sparks me when that planner that was online there when he came in and said that. It really kind of makes me think, there's a lot of issues. When he mentioned that land, he's absolutely right. That to the west, it's high and dry up there, right? That's where all the buildings are going. And then to the south, well, that's where the Black Cemetery is. And graves were exhumed on this property. That's recorded. Who knows what's on that property? They actually, the graves that are in the far corner, they were taken from somewhere else. And I believe one of the other people here, they had headstones in their basement. So we don't know what else is there. So, you have to really look at this property, and that tends to be kind of the big issue. I encourage you to come up here. I'd want to leave Burlington too. You know, I'd want to come up here. It's great. But you have to wonder if this 25-acre parcel is big enough for your needs or will be big enough for your needs. And you must question that too. I bet you inside you're thinking, we like this and this is great. I know it faces east and all that, but you must be thinking, you know, we could use maybe a bit more land. And when I go on the realtor site, we all go on realtor sites and tip around, there's quite a few parcels of larger size that you could go to and it would affect nothing. Like you'd have the zoning and the setbacks and, you know, and in some ways I would almost question, why would you want the headache of trying to even convert this property as well? Because, you know, that's your business, but I'm just saying like, wow, that's a lot of conversion going on there when you could build new, right? So these are just some of the things I see. That property, I've lived there 34 years. I've watched it develop. It was a vacant piece of property originally. And then, you know, Sunderland bought a house and he put it up there, and then Taylor's bought a house and they built a coverall shelter. And then the next fellow there, he built this driving shed, or well, riding ring, I guess, called driving shed. And you got to look at that driving shed or that riding ring, and you got to go, geez, that's a pretty large riding ring for that property. Like it's a huge riding ring for that property. And you'd go, almost like, why was that approved in the first place? Whether they can change it or not. But why are we going to now take this? And that was a problem. And now we're creating another problem. You're creating another problem, right? Yeah, and it's just a laugh. Like what a dog's breakfast it is when I think to myself, we're gonna have these properties, and then we're gonna do these amendments, and we're gonna do these special things on the side, and we're gonna play these types of games, right? It's not, you know. Sorry, there's a certain passion involved, but you have to, like, you can't see that right now you have residential and you have agriculture and it's sitting there and it's coexisting together. And now we're going to have institutional, and then we're going to actually give special institutional. And not only are we going to give, we're going to give some, well, we'll just give you a little special deal over here. And then, and not only that, then you reduce, and then you're going to actually cut them a slack and say, we're going to reduce your taxes and these are the few of these roads. So anyway, that's just some things I see.
Okay, all right. I don't think there was a question there.
I don't
but
know.
Father Anthony would like to make a response, so I'm going to allow that. Maybe just one thing before Father Anthony does speak. I'm looking at the map, and on the north side of Road 49, there's what, 12, 14, is it 15 lots that are there on that 50 acres? Yeah, maybe it is a dog's breakfast. But in today's severance world, that would never, ever be allowed, and hasn't been allowed for a number of years. So just on what has been and has not been, but in the past, there's some of the problems.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Father Anthony.
Thank you. And thank you, Kevin, for your comments. I just want to respond to a few of them. It's been mentioned a couple of times that, Kevin mentioned it lately, that maybe this is too small of a plot for what we need. Absolutely not. The other parcels that we own, yeah, maybe they are big, but we didn't choose them because of their actual size. We use them because of their location predominantly, the ability for us to reach them. So it's not the size. The number of people that are going to live there permanently is very small. As Father Moses said, this land is already zoned for a bed and breakfast. So if a bed and breakfast is to be set up tomorrow, which is an allowed use, I don't think you can restrict the number of people who would be as part of this bed and breakfast. So we are not trying to do this at all. We're actually trying to probably do this. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find a place that would meet our needs, our requirements for the parcel of land, and try to be as frugal as possible. We are a not-for-profit organization, so it's not like we have unlimited. Our income comes from donations from congregation members, so it's not like we're looking for to buy big parcels of land that are expensive. We would not be able to afford these things. So I just want to address that. The other thing about the archaeological, this is something that exists today. So I mean, this is something that is inherent to the land today. It's not something that will change if anybody buys this land. How to address it and how to protect it, I think, from my humble opinion, would be independent of who the buyer is and what the buyer is going to do to the land. So this is an issue that has nothing to do with the church being the one wanting to buy this land versus somebody else, an investor who's coming to buy and build something on the land. As I said at the beginning, we're truly not looking to haul people, because Kevin said people are 300 kilometers away. That's exactly what I meant by saying people are not going to drive in this weather every day just to visit a monastery that has 3 monks or something like that. This would be rare occasions, especially with the weather conditions. Somebody coming all the way from Guelph or Windsor is not gonna come and come in every day. We are not looking to have high traffic to this location. Wherever the monastery is built or God decides which location, we try to avoid traffic coming into the monastery, as I mentioned, because the life of solitude is something that we protect. Otherwise, we look at it as if we are bringing the world to the monastery. We are trying to take the monastery and the monks outside of the world. So this notion of looking for something far away from the city is part of the design process. We want it to be far away from people so that they are not coming here and spending the afternoons here. We want them to visit, obviously, on occasions and things like that. We don't want to prevent them, but there are parts of the season where this monastery will not be accessible to anybody else. But I'm just reiterating the points that may not have been clear. When I heard Kevin's questions, I thought maybe I was not clear in my explanation at the beginning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again.
Thank you, Father Anthony, for that. Any other questions? Got a hand up there? Yes, there is somebody directly behind you wants to speak, Jim, but you were in front of him, so you get to go.
Jim Armstrong. I see it more as a tax evasion thing. I pay my fair share. Everyone, they want to build, fantastic. Bigger, more expensive, better. More taxes paid. I'm pretty near 65, so I've had 64 years here. If something's coming in, make it pay. If my taxes are going up, and quick. We're all taxpayers. They don't seem to want to pay any. Yeah. That's more my point. We all get paid a fee. And there's death in taxes. I'm getting closer to death. Taxes keep going up though. Okay, that's my vision on what they're doing, evading taxes.
Thanks, Jim. I think we've had this question come up a number of times, and I know that there certainly will be tax implications. Our Director of Finance, Ms. Mighton, you're online? Is Carrie there? Could she address a little bit of that? Carrie, could I ask you for some of your expertise? I'm going to preface that by saying on a farm, your farm tax on 100 acres, 99 acres, sometimes 92 acres, or 98 acres is taxed at the farm rate, which is 1 acre is residential. Half of this property is going to be done institutional. So I just want to get clarification that it's not the whole thing. Carrie, please. If I'm correct.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. It will depend on the actual use of the property as well, not just the ownership. But MPAC will decide on the if part of it is being farmed actively and it qualifies under, having a valid farm business registration number, then it may fall in that farm category, which is at a reduced tax rate. But the portion associated with the worship and that institutional type will be what would be possibly in the exempt category. But it'll depend on the different varying uses of the property, how it will actually, what categories it may be assessed in.
And if I may add, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Dave.
Right. As we have seen with other denominations, is that the church, a church, as we are familiar with it, and the parking lot is usually where we see the exemption versus the parsonage or the other dwellings that go along with it are not considered that. They are residences, right? Just like the rest of us is, as you pointed out with the agriculture, where we typically have 1 acre that is taxed like the rest of us are, and the farmland. So we, as the director pointed out, we won't know for sure until MPAC does, but I do have some expectation that with just the chapel or whatever it is, we're not talking all the number of acres that are involved here being tax exempt. No, there may be a portion of it that comes down to how we set up the site plan and so on and so forth, or the buildings, and working through MPAC for them to decide that, but it is not a tax exempt property.
Thank you. When they do a reassessment of your property, they will, Jim. But I don't think you'll get it.
My value will be higher than, so I'll be paying more for them. If they're kind of separate.
Well, if they're doing what you want them to do, is build it bigger and whatnot and pay more taxes, then there is a possibility. Yeah. If it's a rundown portion and it has an effect on your property, MPAC will take a look at it and lower your assessment. And then you won't be paying as much. There's no way of doing that. That's under the building. That's not under planning. And we're here to look at planning questions today. Okay. There was a question further back right behind you, Jim, please.
My name is Morris Radomski. I'm the property owner. We put it up for sale. We didn't get nothing. They came and they wanted to buy it. When we built this, the gentleman there said there was 6 people there on living there, 7. Yeah, there's more there since I've been here. Also, the gentleman said with the building we put up, the barn, we had to go through the Saugeen Conservation. If we would have been farther to the south, we wouldn't have been allowed to build that building.
Correct.
We went through all the building, everything was built proper. We went Saugeen. We even looked at another place that we wanted to buy. We're not buying it because the Saugeen Conservation says you can't build on it. So, and then I'm not for, I don't want to be enemies with everybody. We just decided to sell. But now everybody's complaining about the septic system. They're complaining about the water. There's how many houses are going to go up? All these lots that are going up, they're going to drill wells. They're going to put septic systems in. Like now from 7 people, there's probably when all these 7 lots, there could be another 4. I mean, who knows? There could be 12 people in that, like traffic. Like Road 49 is a terrible road. It is, but I lived on a gravel road all my life. I was a farmer and, I guess what I'm saying, I'm not all my neighbors. I love all my neighbors. I'm not doing this to hurt anybody. We decide to put up an offer, but everything's being built everywhere. And that's what life is all about. It is what it is. I didn't where I lived before. All of a sudden, we were on a dead end road. Well, 6 years. It was like Highway 89. We were at a dead end road. There was houses built. There's nothing we could do. So we moved. You know, and that's what it is. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Let's try to keep it away from emotional and to planning issues. Kevin? Turn on your mic or we'll leave you off.
Like the fellow just said, we're talking about septics and stuff, but those other lots that are there, and you, Mr. Mayor, said the same thing. This whole area would have never developed. It was originally severed in 1969. It wouldn't happen today. So that was a mistake. And here we are making another mistake. There's 7 lots, as the man said. They're all going to be designated state residential. So that's 7 septic systems that are baked into the cake. That's 7 cars times 2, 14 travels up the road, if you want to get into that too. So as I go back to there's too much being jammed onto 25 acres. And, too much, they're trying to put too much on 25 acres and you're going to make the same mistake again. And then, like I said, you're going to have 40 or 50 people. You have a 50-car parking lot. I mean, you can't tell me you can't read that. There has to be more consideration to what's actually going to happen there. So.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Just one more. And thank you very much to the gentleman who's selling the house. And I really appreciate that you went through the planning phases and I know it's a great opportunity for you. On the other hand, the gentleman that was on the phone that talked about the water table and the septic system, yes, it was for a riding arena, not a living residence, not a chapel, a riding arena. So, we just need to be really clear. I understand not everybody's had time to read all the information and whatnot. This is a drastic change to our quality of life. And I think that's something to consider, that we've been longtime members of the community, paying our taxes here for 20 years, and we really love it here. And we don't want to see institutionalized on our road. It's a little road. It's a very happy road. And thank you again for giving me my time. And thank you to both ministers today. I really appreciate your kindness and your openness to talking with us today.
Thank you, Ms. McKenna. Any other questions? As we said, today was just for no other word, fact gathering on the planning and on the going forward with this. So no decisions made here today on this. Number of questions and things that are going to be addressed that come out here. And if you leave your name and number with questions, staff will try and address those and get back to you if need be, and what we can do. I think, David, you said it, that we would sometime going forward on investigation of when we have no timeline right at the present moment of when this will be in front of council or the committee again for approval, dismissal, and or deferral. So, David, you
turn that mic off over there.
I got it.
You're quite correct. We haven't put a timeline on this. Council meetings for zoning bylaws, in particular bylaws and the rest of it, is set on your regular schedule and advertised on the council's on the municipality's website. We will not be providing individual comments back on the received. We will be taking a look at the comments provided in the gross sense, the general sense of things, kind of group them together. We've heard about septics, we've heard about water, we've heard about traffic, we've heard about archaeology, we've heard about MDS, we've heard about density, we've heard about change in use, et cetera, et cetera. We will put those in our planning report in terms of our review of all those comments and our responses in the report to council for your review of our take on those particular issues.
Thank you, David, and thank you for the clarification. I think that's what I did mean, was that they will be addressed in the report that's coming back, which is a public report and will be available for anybody when it does come forward. So keep abreast on the website of when it may be coming up. And we will take everything that's been said today under consideration and address that. Sure, Tony.
Why wasn't there put up on the property? I live 3 properties away. I only heard about this from my next door neighbor, and I'm 3 properties away. There was no notice put in my mail. There was no signage put on the road. There was no notification that any of this was going on. If it hadn't been for my neighbor's concerns, I wouldn't have known. Are we going to get some kind of public notification that's going to be mailed out to the impacted zoning area?
I'm going to, there's certain requirements under the Planning Act, and I'm going to legislative director. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles, and thank you for the question. So notice of this public meeting was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. It was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the subject property, and mailed to all properties within 120 meters of the subject property. So that notification went out on December 20th. So there would have been a sign posted at the property, and then any property within 120 meters of the subject lands would have received that notice in the mail as well.
And yeah, the sign at the property, it meets the requirements of what we're legislated under the Planning Act. So yeah.
I'm sure I'm closer than 120 meters, and I've never got a notification.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back. Yes, there is actually 3, and I would refer to them as recommendations that kind of put forward in one of our documents, because even though the requirements were met, is there any possibility to go over in the board to make sure that this wouldn't happen again with the surprise from the residents? So even though an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, if that's required, but I see that some other townships, organizations, and it is posted on private property. Is it possible to have, and it is actually off on not directly facing the road. There is an angle to it. And is it possible for us to be able to look at what was done, make some recommendations so that something like this is not being relied on by word of mouth in a community?
I'm going to maybe go to David on this one of the requirements under the Planning Act. And I have heard this before, and it's a slippery slope once we start getting down on it. David.
I don't think I could say it any better than that. The municipality follows pretty much to the letter the minimum requirements of the act. All right. And we use the GIS to measure the distances, which it does automatically using the calculations within GIS for the 120. And if a property hits the 120 meters, it pops out the address, period. I wouldn't say most municipalities in Ontario, because I really don't know. There's 400 and some of them in Ontario, if not more. Thank you. There you go. Use in some respects pretty much the same methods going forward in terms of notification. They do vary. There's no doubt. You can go to the city of Toronto, you can go to the city of Guelph, whatever it is, and you can find 4x8 sheets of plywood up on a property that's talking about a 13 or 14 story apartment building. Okay. The municipalities in rural Ontario tend to keep their costs down because that's expensive. And it goes back to property owners when they're doing something like a deck. They're kind of going, geez, it's very expensive doing business here. So councils and this council have taken a look at trying to balance off the requirements to meet the requirements of the act, balance off ensuring that the neighbors are knowing, together with the costs that are implied with planning because of things. And I think that's where they have tried to strike a reasonable balance in the municipality. Well, not that should change or not, they hear from yourselves and others in that regard, as opposed to, and take that under advisement, I guess you could say. What we can say is that this, your neighbors and so on and so forth that are here, is what's anticipated from planning. It does come about by word of mouth. I'm 121 meters away. Bob told Susan, who told George, who told, that works. That's why you're here. You may not like it, but in some respects, that's how community comes together, if you know what I mean, in that regard. So, and at the end, the Ontario Land Tribunal would ask this, is that you may not have liked the notice, but you're here. And that's what counts it. Right. Right. All right. Well, I'm in general pointing out where the municipality sits, and it is council's direction to staff when we take a look at things such as official plans and all the rest of it about what we use for notification. And like I said, we also point out the pluses and the minuses of what it comes to changing, increasing distances, and so on and so forth in that regard. When we take a look at Durham and Neustadt and all the rest of it, we actually end up having the entire town having to be mailed to, and that is the cost of the municipality in that regard. Rural properties, obviously a little bit different. There's far less of you here within a distance, but we do try to balance those recommendations off to you when we provide that in addition to what legislative requirements are. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay. All right. Any other questions? One more shot at it, Kevin.
I certainly wouldn't want to live in a house that meets minimum code. And I wouldn't really want to be living in a spot that works with minimum code to create communities.
Okay. Seeing as there's no further questions, everything on the agenda has been addressed. I think we can declare the public meeting closed. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming today. Appreciate. And it'll be going forward, we'll understand what happens. Keep informed. Meeting adjourned.